Farhana, can you just introduce yourself, and then Julia, you can do the same?
All right, so I'm Farhana. I was also working on Capitol Hill, and it was right when, the year of the pandemic. So from 2019 to 2020, I was working with Barbara Lee at that time. And then, kind of once the pandemic started, I just went, kind of more full time with Chris and started working with a lot more members of Congress, which I really preferred as I didn't really like working in Congress as a direct staffer. Um, but I'm really glad that I got that chance to go on Capitol Hill. And I think everything I thought about Capitol Hill was so different, from what I learned growing up. And then once I got in there, I realized that it's very easy for people to get involved in it. But the way we have been kind of taught is it is such a difficult path to get there. So I'm hoping that more students and young people are aware that it's actually not as difficult. And I'm hoping that I can do that in a way where, writing down like in simple terms, like what are the paths, kind of how there could be more, social workers than just young adults in Capitol Hill, because that's definitely what they need. And they want it as well.
Awesome. So you work with Congressman Barbara Lee. I was just working with her last year, so we can talk about that in a second. Kenneth, can
Nice.
you introduce yourself?
Yes. Hi, Julia, and to our class folks that are here with us. If y'all are tuning in, I'm K2. My formal name is Kenneth, but I go by K2. I'll maybe get to share that story with you a little bit later. But my journey to the Hill was initially started with the Social Work Reinvestment Act lecture series under the leadership of Dr. Judith Crocker Billingsley. Then I was introduced to the Dr. Charles E. Lewis Jr. That year I met Taylor Brown, the amazing Taylor Brown. So that was like a hybrid between the lecture series and Student Advocacy Day 2020, I think that was. Right, Taylor? Wasn't it
Yeah.
2020? Yeah, 2020. And so just being exposed to policy research between both Dr. J, as we affectionately call her, and Dr. Lewis, because they both are MSW graduates from Clark Atlanta, and then becoming a fellow of Chris just exposed me to more. So that's where I'm very, very similar to my moderator. During the pandemic is where I got most of my Hill exposure.
Awesome. Julia, can you tell us about yourself, if you don't mind?
Yeah, sure thing. So I am a Master's of Social Work student, and I'm going to George Mason University just outside of DC. So I'm in Fairfax, very close.
Yeah.
Previously, I lived in Los Angeles, where I started a grassroots nonprofit for veterans who had PTSD and traumatic brain injury. And that was a whole experience, growing that from nothing and really getting the community engaged. So I'm really interested in organizing. I'm very interested in advocacy. So now I'm starting to think about moving back into that arena, especially being so close to DC. So that's where I am at this moment.
So, and then, let me see. All right, LaSalle, I don't know if you want to join the video, but you're welcome to. And I don't know how many people you have, but y'all are welcome to join in if you want, or you can talk to us in the chat, or you can do neither. So, okay. I guess we should start. Julia, do you have any questions for Farhana or Kenneth?
Well, sure. I mean, there's various causes, various themes that I'm interested in and would like to, as I have free time, would like to offer my services. So like, for instance, I worked on a paper about HR 40, and that's something for the Reparations Act, to create a national study around the history of slavery, and then also offer solutions. So that's just one example, but there's other things like housing, and there's so many different pieces. So if I'm interested in trying to create change, what is your advice on narrowing that?
think we lost
Julia,
her.
I think you had sound issues at the end.
Yeah, at the end.
We heard like almost all of it, and then it messed up. Still not working? No. That's weird. You could try leaving the session and coming back. I don't know. It could be an issue with that room. Farhana, what did you say you're doing now?
I'm working with a nonprofit. I'm like a job developer. I was working a few different places. The pandemic kind of really changed a lot of things for me. Like I'm just really not willing to put up with so much things that I was putting up with before. And I do have, the tools, the resources and network to get a lot of change done. So instead of, unfortunately, one thing that I wasn't prepared for was office politics. And, you would like to think that people hold the same morals and values as you when you're working, but they really don't. And I was always told throughout school that uh, it's really hard for social workers to work with non-social workers because, we do have a deeper level of understanding. So, trying to find ways to work with people who just don't have, that deeper level of understanding was something that, if it was too difficult to work around with, I just kind of wanted to get together like-minded individuals so we could get those changes made. And then also making some of, the offices aware of how to be more collaborative and engaging. Because when you are, if it's the same mission and goal, you should be able to work together. But I see a lot of competition, office politics that really prevents a lot of change. And if it's something that like I've tried and I kind of see it as not going any forward, I would just move to somebody like another organization that I feel would be where I'll be more productive at, and also that changes can be made. And I've worked with a lot that have done that. So kind of going towards those either in a contract position, sometimes even volunteering, or a few of them have offered me jobs, and that's just something I kind of look at. But I did want to do something like I have a lot of privileges in the sense with my networking and just certain things. Growing up in DC, I didn't realize all these privileges I had. So I want to be able to do a little bit more and, provide people the platform they need to have their voices heard. Because I don't want to be a voice for the voiceless. I really dislike that term, but I want to give, people, whomever it may be, especially young adults, the platform they need to have their voices heard. Because I don't think you can speak for a cause unless you are actually, part of it. Sorry, you cannot speak on something when you're not, when you haven't experienced it. So I think people in their communities can best serve. I think we have to learn from them, us giving us our professional and educational background to help them, find the ways when you go into politics or any kind of policy area. The language is very important. So it's like, working together with them. And I think the best way to kind of make changes or that are effective is by having those people that are affected by those, whatever the policies may be, having them be involved with us and us just kind of providing them the platforms, the education or resources we have to, just support them.
Yeah. That was an awesome answer, and I wasn't expecting any of it. I think I asked you like what you were doing now, and you were like, "No, I'm gonna give you an incredible answer."
I have like a bunch of questions that I answered on my other screen, so I was expecting those.
No, that was awesome. We're gonna get there. That was amazing. So many follow-up questions, but Julia, is your audio back?
Testing 1, 2, 3.
Hey, we got you back, Julia.
You can hear.
Right.
Still working even as I'm talking.
Yes.
You had your question, but now you may have more questions.
More questions, right?
I I think maybe let me listen for a little bit to get a little bit more of your histories, and then ask like a more intelligent question that I can really get your wisdom from.
Sure.
Taylor, I'm a job developer.
Oh, well. I love that. Oh, okay.
You're a job developer?
Yeah, so workforce development specialist. What we do, and I've worked in this field before too. It's actually giving people the technical skills that they need to kind of go into the work field. College degree is not necessary for everybody. So the good things about these kind of programs is you can kind of get into like the corporate world or just in the career field, but you always have that opportunity to go back to school and kind of advance your skills or just get more credentials. I do feel one of the biggest barriers to college is a lot of students don't have the privilege to not work. So having a job and then being able to go to college, there's not. I went back. I took breaks in between my college and I did that for my own personal reasons. But I working with workforce development, that is one of the biggest things I've seen. Unfortunately, people just don't have the privilege to go to college or take off of work, scholarships, or just funding. So and honestly, if I knew about these when I got out of high school, I don't know if I would have gone to college, because these are really great fields, things that I feel like a lot of people kind of want to go into, but never knew that they were possible without that degree.
Mm-hmm. I love that, like as a social worker, you can do so much. Like you have all this amazing experience and you bring all of that with you into your job. So anyway, I have similar stuff where like I transition back and forth between clinical and macro, and it's just like it's weird, but it's like we have the education to do it. So
Yeah,
right.
That's
Yeah.
why Columbia. I don't know if you went there as well.
I went to WashU for my MSW.
Okay. I know Columbia was the one school that offered both the degrees, so I did a dual degree. I always wanted to do clinical just because it's the safe option, but I was always told, like growing up, that you should be in the policy field. And growing up in DC, I'm like, I would never work in policy. That was something I really I wanted to stay away from it. But being told this, and then when I was at Columbia, like before I even accepted the offer, that's one thing they told me, that we offer both programs and you can do it. So like this is great because I can still get my safe option, which is clinical. So the micro field is taken care of, but then I could do more things in the macro field, which I think is really important if you want changes in the micro field. Is kind of have to look at things as a whole before you can look at them individually.
For sure.
Why did you feel like micro is safe?
Because we're going to need a lot of therapists. That's something that's never going to stop. With public policy, I think I just didn't want to have to deal with so much people. It's a lot more work when trying to negotiate or just even speaking to people. But that's a long-term thing, meaning I wanted to do micro in the sense where individual problems, but then you can also do macro at the same time. So I felt like that was a way for me to kind of do both. I do believe that macro, a lot of the challenges people face are more in the macro field. So if some of those issues are resolved, there's going to be a lot less in the micro field, or we'll have a lot more, I guess, resources to give people access to mental health, because a lot of mental health problems do stem from things like shelter, food, just the basic necessities. And eliminating those will eliminate a lot of mental health problems, or at least get people out of survival mode so that they can reach their potentials.
Yeah.
And you go to GMU?
Mm-hmm.
I did my BSW there, and I hate GMU.
I'm doing the online program, so I have no idea what. Did you do the in-person program?
Oh yeah, I did, and I was about ready to quit because one of my I don't know, it was advisor, dean, or it was somebody big up there. she by the way, I'm a very controversial person, so you guys should not do anything I do because I'm always ready to get kicked out or fired. So even though I
That
want,
makes you a solidified social worker. You're a disruptor, is what you are.
and it's funny because I never really did that, but I'm a neurodivergent person, so growing up I was always following the rules, but then you get sick of it. And also when I kind of see certain things happening to me, um I'm over here trying to advocate for certain things, but I can't do it for myself. And that's kind of what like pushed me to, I'm not going to say I'm a troublemaker, but I'm definitely not quiet about things. So I felt very hypocritical. If I'm going to social work, I'm advocating for this and that, but like I'm experiencing it. So pretty much I was ready to quit. So I kind of told the dean something. By the way, I was what's it called? What is that thing when you're on the dean's list? Like every semester I was there, and I was a pretty good student. So there was something very small which I missed the deadline for, but I made them aware that I was going to be overseas in I was in the mountains, Kenneth.
Yeah.
I made them aware that I will be overseas and like not reachable. So if there's anything I need to do, please reach out to this person. They didn't do it. So kind of when I came back, I was told I needed to submit something. I had to submit it the same day. I don't know how I did it, but it was something very difficult. So I did submit it, but I got a lot of criticism for that, saying I should have had it in before the date, even though I still got it in before the date. I did it 3 hours before it was due. So one of the things that they mentioned to me was, well, other people finished it before you, so we might not place you in a, how we have to do our hours, the field placements. We might not do that till the next year. So I thought about it. I was like, with all due respect, I never had any problems, blah, blah, blah. And by the way, I had really good professors too. So I told them, I was like, if you guys are going to do that, I'm not going to stay at this school. I'll go somewhere else. Because I felt like it was more of a threat to me, that they were acting like they were doing me some kind of favor. I was like, you're not doing me a favor. I'll go to other schools. I'm ready, So I got myself handed to me by them, said my stuff. I wasn't rude or disrespectful, but I wasn't, nice. I was very, another thing I learned is how to be professionally not take shit from anybody, right? And, I kind of use those skills. So I was very direct with them, which they really don't expect and they don't like it. But I said what I had to say. In the beginning of the conversation, they were like, we're going to let you know in a few weeks what the answer is going to be, if we're going to put you in a placement or not. So I said my stuff at the end. Then I left. Before I got back into my car, they called me. They're like, oh, you know what? We're going to put you in a placement this year. And this was not even 5 minutes after I left. But that was one of the first things I was like, okay, you know what? That actually turned out good, because I could have just gotten done with this program. They could have definitely said something to me about the way I spoke, even though they're pretty critical. The way they speak is not always nice. And I've seen this along so many different universities. A lot of people experience the same things as me. And, I didn't think it was that common, but so pretty much I was ready to be done, ready to quit. So it's kind of, if I get to that point, I'm ready to take whatever consequence it is. And that's actually when I do my best. But I'm not recommending that to anybody, just because I don't know what the results will be for other people. But it worked out for me, because before I got back to my car, they called me and they were like, we're putting you in a placement. And then they were apologizing. I was like, okay. I didn't like their apology, but I was like, okay, at least I'm going into my placement.
Yeah, and you spoke up, and that obviously, you like with your advocacy and your future work, that's been really important for you.
I had seen, I've seen favoritism in the academic field, and I'm never gonna use anybody else's, accommodations as a reason. I believe there's so many different reasons why people get accommodations, but I did have friends in there that got accommodations for things that were not really important, or that weren't necessary. So I think that's what kind of offended me is, these people are getting it for certain things. Me, I'm the type who has always been like, on top of things, very disciplined. And the fact that I made sure they knew I was going to be in a remote area, I planned everything before. So it wasn't a good thing for me to come back to, and just kind of hear from them, because I think I'm a millennial, and growing up, we had to always explain ourselves. And it feels like we're always, justifying ourselves. And I learned that over explaining is a trauma response. So it's just getting really exhausting doing that. So kind of now, I mean, I still do it here and there. It's something that I'm working on. But at that time, I was just like, if this is something that I wouldn't want somebody else to go through it. So I felt like it was just ethically not okay. And, I didn't have to bring up the other student, but that is kind of the reason why I was like, you know what, this student is never in school, and they have a lot of these accommodations. So why are they getting slack? I've never gotten in trouble for anything. And I know other people who have. So it was just like, you can make, I feel like there's that favoritism where they will do something for one student, but not another. And that's when I have an issue. So while
yeah,
there,
that's understandable.
yeah, but while you're there, it's difficult because this was the dean. Like,
yeah, I hear that. Luckily, in my program, the online, it's been good. It's been a good experience. So I don't know. I'm totally separate from like the in-person. It's a very separate experience. But yeah, it has been good. I thought of a question.
Okay.
All right. Since you guys were on the Hill, what was your experience or exposure or whisperings around HR 40?
Can you remind me of what HR 40 is?
Yeah. It's the reparations bill. So to do a national study of the effects of slavery with our at the hands of our government, this responsibility of our government to preach the truth through this study, research study, and also to offer recommendations on what reparations would be. The bill has been like raised. Do
you remember who
I think for over 30 years, and it's never passed.
I'm familiar with it, and I think there might be several others similar to it. Do you remember who sponsors that one?
Isn't it Barbara?
Oh yeah, I think so. Yes.
That's what I was thinking, but there's like a lot of them. So
yeah, it's a lot of them.
There are. Yes.
Yeah.
That's my experience anyway. Go ahead, Kenneth.
So for me, my time on the Hill was wildly absorbed by the George Floyd Policing Act. And then I had the privilege to be peripheral to some of the research for the bill that now Mayor KB passed primarily for foster care. What I will say is through those experiences, the first thing I was able to do was, the first thing is I came to the table as a student, literally and figuratively. I had the opportunity. So I was the second BSW congressional intern from JCSU, which is my university, Johnson C. Smith University, where I graduated from. The first one was a female. She actually worked with a congressional stakeholder who was the gateway to my experience on the Hill with the social work caucus roundtable, which is just so interesting. So needless to say, being able to really like read a bill, know what it means, that was the exposure that I got. And one of the things that I learned very on in leadership when I worked for the largest nonprofit I've ever worked for before, over 10,000 people. I managed over 800 people in my department. I think I was like 23 or 24 at the time. I did not have a degree. But looking at how you look at approaching projects as it pertains to like reading a bill, looking at legislation, three things that I learned: trail view, tree view, and plain view. Trail view is essentially on the ground. That's right in front of you. Tree view is above the atmosphere. So how does this impact those who are on the ground? And then your plain view is like the aerial view. So I think of that of like federal government, local government, and then community. And so I had to look at that leadership model to be able to basically digest this new exposure to like actually looking at a bill. I was not really politically inclined when I got into my congressional um, fellowships. So this was a new experience for me. And so what it has done though over the course of time is given me the inspiration and the aspiration to be very practical in my pursuits, because one of the things that I learned, and Justin touched on this earlier, is that, and I know, not to pull you in, Taylor, but Taylor has sat in the political space more actively during his MSW post grad, right? Don't I have that right, Taylor?
Sadly, yeah, both in and after. No, I'm playing.
So, you know, one of the things that I really enjoyed about Taylor's session last year, one thing I enjoyed about what Justin shared this year, and what I have experienced myself, is that, you know, for young, particularly for young social workers, infrastructure is imperative. One of the most important things that you have to have is a foundation. When you're going for advocacy, if you're actually going to legislate for a bill, you have to have infrastructure, because there are unforeseen forces, if I could say it like that, that are going to meet you at the place of your passion. And if your passion is to advocate for something because it's true, just, and right, that's not going to be good enough. It needs to be connected to a personal why. And so one of my favorite things to do in social work settings is to always start with storytelling. It's the central way I do what I do as an advocate. I love to tell stories. I think they drive the awareness, and I think you can ultimately reach the goal, because when you tell stories, it deals with the heart. And we can't, that's what we can't legislate. We can legislate policy, we can, you know, we can legislate a hope, but we can't legislate heart. And we can't make people do the work, but we can compel them to do the work through stories. And so when you look at when you look at legislation, or you look at a policy, or you look at a bill, if you start with heart,
Mm-hmm.
head is going to automatically follow. And I just believe that one of my favorite quotes, and I said that this to Dr. Lewis, and I have to quote it because he made me feel like I was smart. That you know, advocacy without policy is simply philanthropy. And there's nothing wrong with philanthropy. But if you want to actually get something done, and you want to actually change someone's life longitudinally, policy is going to have to be a stakeholder in that development.
And Kenneth, I want to add to what you said, because I did it more at like I had to write the bills, I had to do the 1 minute speeches, like the legislative part of it.
Sure.
The reason I left Congress and don't want to go back is because I do not agree with how it works. I believe it's a waste of time. So Julia, you mentioned that the Reparations Act, I did bring that up, by the way. It's been over 30 years and nothing is happening. So we used to call Mitch McConnell's desk the graveyard, because, like, people are working very hard to put together these bills, and some of them are like maybe 30 to 40 pages long, but every year data changes, stats change. So every year they are redoing it. So I feel like people have put so much work into it, and these are the people that are working there, right? They put so much work into it, but then every year, because it's getting dismissed, it keeps getting brought up over and over again. It's just a bunch of time wasted in people trying to, get these, like, either the Senate or the House to agree to it. One thing is, like, I feel like that's a waste of time. So when it comes to like getting those type of things passed, kind of like what Kenneth said, if you have a personal mission, or is something that you truly believe, the best way to kind of get them to listen is, there's also some tricks that I've learned working there, because I know how people got my attention, and I also know when we had to respond. But one thing is getting somebody highly influential in there that shares the same either value, goal, or mission as you. And this has to be, and you will find them, by the way, this has to be a person that, the congressional members are, I guess, like honored in a way to like have them come on board. But just getting one person is all you need for them to really listen to you. Because we can say it all we want, but we're just normal people. We don't have, that kind of influence. But a person with influence is a shortcut, in my opinion, to, getting a lot more things done in, the federal level. But with that being said, you can always do, I think local policies are much more effective, but obviously they're going to take longer. But while you're waiting for it to get passed at the federal level, you can still do a lot of things to make changes. Of course, it's hard because you need people in every county to do it. But it is definitely something possible. So instead of kind of waiting on the federal government to, like, pass these things, there are things we can do in the meantime while they're going through it. Because I've seen bills there, like you said, for so many years. And it's not that they, the only time they'll actually like listen to a bill is when there's controversy around it, right?
Mhm.
They'll take care of that real quick, and it may be a
Yep.
complete new bill. But then there's bills like this that, people have brought in up over and over, that kind of just get like dismissed or overlooked, and each year congressional staff is just redoing the same work. um, there's this, I guess, myth that people believe in Congress, you need co-sponsors to get a bill passed. So one thing that a lot of staffers would do is, go to different offices, get other Congress members to be their co-sponsors. But I've seen bills passed with just a sponsor. They didn't have any co-sponsors. So there's a lot of time wasted, unfortunately, which is why, like I said, I don't really agree with how Congress works. But in order for, you can't take down a whole system that's been there for years, right? But you can come up with new policies or find ways to kind of make those changes. And one of those is getting young people in Congress, because I think people have this idea in their head that it's never going to change. That's just the way it is. But if there's young people in there, like-minded individuals, or just people with that different perspective, they can take over House and they can take over Senate. And, then executive doesn't really even matter, because if House and Senate can agree to something, it can override executive branch. So people can make that change. And I wish more young adults saw that it's actually very simple, but we have been made to believe it's very difficult. But if you guys want changes, be up there, like, and you can do it. I have a friend, one of my best friends is a congressman, and he really went through a lot. And he has a great background in the sense where he did a lot of different things to get where he's at, but a very humble person. And when he speaks his story, he's very, I guess, close with his constituents, which is why they have such a close connection with him. But he does give you that hope that no matter where you come from, you can get to those positions. And he kind of had the same thing as, all of us growing up. Like, we want to be able to make those decisions, but we learned early on that, advocacy without, like, having those policies changed, it's not going to work. We can protest. I've been protesting since I was 2. I have a picture in DC from when I was 2 protesting. I got a little tired of protesting for the sole fact that the people you're protesting to, they usually know exactly what is right or wrong, but they just don't care. So you got to put yourself in a position to actually be heard. And the only way you could do that by being in decision-making positions, such as being a congressman, a congresswoman, or just anywhere in that arena of where you do have those decisions. So
Also,
real quick, Kenneth, we're at time. I need to
okay.
run. Y'all are welcome to keep talking until the hour. But you're welcome to join us on the main stage at the hour whenever you're done.
Okay,
So,
that's fine. I just
it's
wanted
been a
to
pleasure.
add one last. Okay, thank you, Taylor, for being here. I appreciate it. We do. We both do. One thing I would say to Julie is to encourage you, and if someone else is watching, one of the things that I love analogies, because I'm a social worker, right? We love analogies, and we love acronyms. We love acronyms. One of the things that people want to do, like when you see a tree and from a tree you create a chair, right? We love the chair, right? We like to chop the tree down, shape the chair, get the fabric, assemble it. But you know what the most important part of the chair is?
the branch? No, the roots?
Nope.
The tree.
The screw.
The screw.
The
Okay.
screw.
Okay.
The thing you can't see.
Okay.
You're right.
Okay. That's what local government is.
Yeah.
Federal government is the chair.
You're right. Right.
Local government is the screw. It's the thing that keeps it tight. You know, think about when the pandemic happened and the former administration wanted certain states to do certain things, whether it was open schools or close down bars or change bar hours. The previous administration had to yield to the governors. That's local government. That's local government. And yeah, there was threats of taking funding away and this, that, and the other. All that was negotiation. But who held the power was the governors. And so I want to say to you, yes, have that interest in federal policy, federal legislation, but let that be your aerial view that helps drive your trail view interests. You know, so when you say, okay, well, I'm interested in reparations, and then start to do an assessment and an evaluation. What has me interested? Who gets impacted by this? What do they get from it? How is it not going to only impact the person, but the legacy of that individual? You know what I'm saying? And I'm not saying this from the perspective of a religious standpoint. I'm actually using this as a historical context. Most African Americans cannot trace their ancestors past one generation. Historically, one of the most historical figures we ever heard of, Jesus, has proof positive of 42 generations of proof of his existence. You see what I'm saying? Okay, that's a big thing to take in, right? That's like, whoa.
Yeah.
Okay, you could chew on that for the rest of the day.
That's right.
That's plain view. Now let's bring that down to trail view. There are some children right where you live, a mile from where you live, north, west, south, east of where you live, that don't have something. How can you make a practical impact towards that? When I got my internship for when I was a fellow with the Social Work Reinvestment Act lecture series, it was national and local voting. We were running into both terms at the same time. So that's where I put my interest. Is that something I'm passionate about right now? Aging out of foster care youth. It's all up in here. I want to do it every day, all day, any day, today, tomorrow to next week, whatever. That's what I want to do. But right now, what impacts the effectiveness of that longitudinal goal is the power of voting. And so when you focus on now, it impacts your capacity for next. And that's something I'm constantly seeing social workers struggle with. Like even my colleagues writing papers, you know, for different courses. When we got to at Johnson C. Smith, we have to actually write a junior dissertation for undergrad. It's like you have to do research, you have to get raw data, you have to interpret that data. I mean, it's like a full semester course, okay, just to write the paper. Because our BSW program or the MSW program at Smith is designed for you to go into a PhD program. So they kind of start wetting your whistle a little bit at the BSW level. The point that I'm making is when we were going through that process, there were so many ideas that we all had, and I had to encourage them because I was the vice president of the social work club one term, then I was the president the next term. What's right now? What's right now? What have we been working on now? Half of my class volunteered with me. I volunteered for 2 years at Phasing Up for New Possibilities, which is a foster care program. I spoke all over the country. I spoke for the baccalaureate program for program directors for the BSWs. The president of the organization stepped down for the national conference and said, I want you to speak this year.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not bragging. I'm saying that to say that the research, the work that I was doing gave me an opportunity to have a bigger platform to, guess what, advocate for the trail view stuff. Not the aerial view. I wanted to talk about aging out of foster care youth so bad, but that wasn't important right now. What was important right now is that I was Black, I was male, which means I'm a minority in my field. As much as I love social work, I'm a double minority as Black and male. And then I was also a minority for much HBCUs who don't get congressional internships.
And Kenneth, I wanted to add exactly what you're saying, just recognizing what the barriers are right now. Meaning, like, as much as I hate that word that well, that's just the way it is. It's always gonna be like that.
Mm-hmm.
I understand that, and I'm kind of seeing it where it is right now. It is like that. So you know what? I've accepted it, but it doesn't mean it's always gonna be like that. But the way we're working right now has to be with that mindset, because you cannot be fighting multiple things, right?
Mm-hmm.
So right now, unfortunately, they have the power. So that's something we're gonna get to. But right now we're working and we don't have the power. So while we're working towards that, what can we do? So I always do some, like, I guess the one thing that has helped me in working in policies, I've made a lot of shortcuts. And these are shortcuts that I kind of I'm a strategist as well. So I have learned a lot of shortcuts in getting, like, these changes made. And if you want to start something with the Reparations Act, you can find groups, you can find like-minded individuals, go to
Mm-hmm.
find people like you, find groups, start talking to them, because doing it alone is not only overwhelming, um your mind gets boggled, because you kind of need somebody else that you know has the same goal in mind, but they may think differently than you, right? You kind of need, you cannot make a policy on your own, you cannot make change on your own, you need a group of people. And just having that support, having more voices, then you can take advantage of the privileges. Maybe one of the people in the groups has connections to here and there. So just building that community. And um, with social media, you can easily find like groups that are
Mm-hmm.
doing for
Mm-hmm.
reparations or whatever the cause may be. Find your tribe of people, because then you might look at, I want to do reparations, but when you get there, these people may have been researching it for a long time. As much as you may want to do that right now, there
Mm-hmm.
might be else you have to do first. But that's just,
Yeah.
I don't know about for this one, but I do remember bringing this up in Congress, and it was overlooked. And I was just like, oh, well, that's, why? This is such an important issue. But then I saw there's so much more uh, that needs to be done. And then this one will come a lot easier, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you gotta find people. It's not something you can do on your own. And also, just when you do work with people, you realize, like, you know, is you're not alone in it. So you
Mm-hmm.
have that, and you will find a lot of like-minded people.
Yeah. I've won, because I'm just, like I mentioned, I'm just starting to like step into this, and so I'm like, where are the people, but also kind of that are already like fighting this battle,
Mm-hmm.
like
Mm-hmm.
I'm there to join them. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not there to like come up with my unique conceit about anything.
Of
But
course.
also what I've thought about too, which speaks to what you were saying, Kenneth, is on the local level. It's really hit me that this starts with education being taught to our students, right? This is
I
like,
didn't want to give you the answer.
yeah, no, and I know that, but I just see the system. I'm like, the damn system, just like make the shift faster.
So
We
listen,
just,
I am a mover, and I'm a mover, and I like applications. So anytime I invest value, I want an immediate return. Okay. There's two things I want you to walk away with, because we're almost at the hour.
yep.
And I will give the last word to my girl, because it's Women's History Month. So I'm going to give you the last word. But two things. Number one, as you're progressing as a social worker, another leadership practice I learned from that organization I told you, the large organization I told you I worked with when I was like 24 years old, was 1 inch wide, 12 feet deep. 1 inch wide, 12 feet deep. Operate 1 inch wide, 12 feet deep until you get where you want to go. Number two, 6 half steps equals 3 whole steps.
6 half steps equals 3
Equals
whole
3 whole
steps.
steps. Yeah, it's simple math, but it sounds confusing. I always like to give that because I want you to measure your progress. And because 6 steps, 6 half steps is like, wow, okay, that seems like a lot, right? But it's only 3 whole steps, but you're moving.
Mm-hmm.
So what I want you to think about, and what I want you to write down before the end of the day, and I actually do this charge anytime I connect with someone. By the end of this session at 6 o'clock, right before your brain is officially fried, write down 2 things that you can do to actually empower students about the true knowledge and education around identity.
Mm-hmm.
True self-efficacy through authentic history. I don't know what it could be. You could know what it be. It could be an after school program. It could be a community program. It could be you offer a book that you read at the library and do open discussions, and find another organization that does free snacks during the summertime. And it's just, you open up with, you know, a song, or you open up with a discussion, read a passage from the book, call it, you know, Julie small group, you know. And so we're not talking just about one person, but that's the next step. That's the next practical step. Also think about, for your internship, maybe getting in a space where you could actually use this experience for your internship, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you're online, you have a lot more leverage as long as it lines up with CSWE.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes.
So yeah, I
Yes.
know. Trust me, I know.
Yes.
Those are your two takeaways for me.
Okay.
Okay? Because it's practical, it's too easy not to do,
Mm-hmm.
and you would have accomplished something. 1 inch wide, 12 feet deep, 6 half steps, 3 whole steps, trail view, tree view. What's the last one?
Trail view, tree view,
Plain view.
like atmosphere view or air view.
Plan view, absolutely.
Plan view. Okay.
You can call it atmosphere. I'm fine with that. All right, I yield. I yield. I yield. I yield. I yield.
I yield back, right? And I will say this because, you know, we are almost out of time. Get a mentor. Just get a mentor.
Good
You
advice.
don't want to get a mentor that you pay. I have had some of the most amazing mentors, and it wasn't with me even asking. Having a genuine interest in people, like a lot of the things I did, I realized that these are things that people really value, and I thought it was just me. Like, I have interest in the most random things, but having those interests has grown my like network and my connections internationally. And you know, just having that has been so like positive. And like, you know, I'm not a gatekeeper. I've always been the type to like, anything I can do to like help other people, kind of like, you know, not have to go through the things we went through. You know, if one person succeeds, we all succeed. And that's how all my mentors have been. um and you don't have to go, like, you know, I know with mentorship sometimes people are actually looking for them in the sense where like they'll pay for them. No, you know what you should do? Just kind of read about people, read about philanthropists or just people in that field that are doing something you want. Find their LinkedIn's, go to some event they might be at, show them a genuine interest. And you know, there's like different formats, or like there's different ways where you can ask them, like, you know, you want to learn from them, and you would love if they could be your mentor. Because people who are very competent and who have the right, you know, goals in mind, or like that just really want to see people succeed, they will give you all of this knowledge. They will never gatekeep it because they want to see you succeed. You'll get all the shortcuts from them, because if we've done all this work, we had to go through all this. If we can give that knowledge back on, hey, just letting you know, just do this and this if you want it to be just a little bit shorter, because then you guys are going to move quicker. You guys don't have to relearn what we had to learn. So I actually Kenneth, I don't know if you got that big like email where I answered a bunch of questions and I didn't even talk about none of them, but like
Yeah,
I just
I care about the conversation more.
oh yeah, but this is good. And that's what I was thinking. I was like, I was gonna email it afterwards, anyways, just because it's like, you know, some of the stuff. But like, Jackie, if you want, like, you know, stay connected with us. Give us like your email, contact info, and what I can do on my side is like, you know, kind of give you some of the things that have worked for me, or kind of put you toward that way of um mentorship, or just kind of getting into like where you can find these people. And like the last thing I'm gonna say is, Kenneth mentioned 6 half steps equal 3 steps, right?
Yeah.
I thought it was like interesting you said that, because I was just talking to, I think, Justin. um there's something called 6 degrees of separation. I don't know if you guys have heard of it, but man, is that real.
Oh my gosh, it is.
6 degrees of separation. I can get to any person ever. And I just heard about this as a kid, and I didn't realize,
Yeah.
wow, especially with social media now, it's very easy. But it's who you know. You wanna have the right person there to help you get to that place. Like I said, I don't believe in voice for the voices. I believe in giving people the platform
Absolutely.
to go to amplify their voices. And you know what? Sometimes as us, we need somebody influential enough to get us there. And they have to be in the same thing as you. And you know what, honestly, even if they're not, hey, if they can get you to that platform, if they support it, that's great. Sometimes it's not, you may not find people that are even interested in the same thing, right? But if they're helping you get towards your goals, that's always a great thing. So I've learned to work with people who I completely disagreed with. I was very not ready to do that at first, but then I started doing it and I realized, you know what, we're very different, but we're still able to put aside those differences because we may have either same common goal, maybe a business goal, or it may just be like just something that we're both working towards. So take advantage of both things. Keep going to these networking events. You will meet great people, and stay connected. I don't know if you're in the DC area. You said you're an online student, but
yeah, I'm in Fairfax. Yeah, I'll look for both of you.
I'm in Fairfax too.
Okay, cool. Great.
All right.
Wonderful. Thank you guys so much. It was lovely to connect.
Thank you for being here. We appreciate you.
Yeah. Thank you for being here.
All right. I'll see you guys in the reception.